and welcome to the Huntington Way. My name is Pearl Sunshine.
And I'm Lenny DiCastro.
And in today's episode, we'll be talking about a unique group of people, educators who go into teaching after switching careers.
Let's start with career changes in general. In a survey done by Harris Poll, it was found that 52% of workers in the United States considered a job changes in 2021, and that 44% of people had concrete plans in making the change.
And some of those job changes were people who wanted to go into teaching. According to a survey conducted in 2017 by the University of Phoenix, 34% of K-12 teachers are career changers, with 36% of those people coming from a business and management field. So what are some reasons that people switch into the field of education?
Some reasons for switching to teaching as a second career is that they enjoy working with children or teens. They feel passionate about a certain subject, and they want to share that passion with others. More on logistical side, some parents choose to go into teaching so they have the same schedule as their children, and it happened in my way.
And Lenny, that happened with you, where you worked at a
Yes.
school so that you could be on the same schedule
With
as
my
your
child.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And some other reasons that people switch into teaching could be that someone has taught a class before and really enjoyed doing it. They want to make a difference in others' lives. Many people were inspired by a teacher of their own. And someone may have been told that they would make a good teacher.
And there are also many benefits to becoming a teacher after already having experience in other fields. Their approach to teaching may be different since they didn't go through the standard training that people like myself went through. I did the 4-year teaching degree when I was studying in the Philippines. And some of them are able to look at our strategies and best practices in a new way.
Another benefit that I thought of is that the teacher is able to bring in real world and real life experience into their classroom. I personally know a few teachers who were able to do this. I know someone who was an accountant for a while that is now a math teacher. I know someone who had a lot of businesses of her own and now she's a business teacher. And I also know someone who worked at a theater, a performing arts theater, and is now an English teacher and does some theater tech classes.
Great. One benefit, too, is that a teacher is able to really show students how the content will connect to jobs after high school. The amount of times teachers are asked by students, when will I ever use this in real life? These teachers are able to answer that question based on their personal experiences and past jobs. The teacher is able to decipher the key information that students need to know for life after school.
And there are a few challenges to switching into teaching as well. It is one of the most time-consuming careers out there, so depending on what field the person comes from, there may be a large shift in the amount of time and energy put into the job. Because the person is older, some people may assume that they already have lots of experience teaching, which can be a good thing and a bad thing. Other teachers and administrators may not realize this, that the person is new to teaching, so they may not reach out to help out as much because they assume that the person already knows what they're doing.
The survey referenced earlier by University of Phoenix found that the most challenging adjustments career changers encounters are classroom management because they are not used to having it while they are having their own job, adjusting to a school setting, and needing to adapt to how children learn as opposed to adults.
Yeah, and just to comment on some of those factors, especially classroom management, it makes sense why people new to the field wouldn't be as used to, being able to manage their classroom, managing these different behaviors, because odds are they're used to working with adults or at least older people. And same thing with, learning how children learn compared to adults. It's very different. We've talked about the reasons that people change careers into teaching and some pros and cons of switching into the field, but let's dive in a bit to how these teachers earn their teaching license.
In general, if someone has a degree in the subject they want to teach, they will be able to get the initial teaching license after completing a 1 or 2 year program based on their state's requirements. For people who don't have a degree in the subject they want to teach, there will be a few extra steps to take, including enrolling in a short-term master's program that specifically relates to education or the subject itself.
In Colorado, the first step into earning an alternative teaching license is to have a 4-year bachelor's degree in any field. Then the person needs to complete a background check before choosing a specific subject or endorsement area.
To be accepted into an alternative teaching program, the candidate must either complete an elementary content exam for people wanting to early childhood, elementary, or special education. For those seeking at K-12 or secondary school for grades 7 to 12 license, they must either hold a degree in that subject, have at least 24 semester hours of college-level coursework in the area, or pass a Colorado State Board of Education approved assessment.
Then it's time to obtain a teaching position and apply to an actual teaching program. Typically, teachers earn an alternative teaching license, or people who do earn an alternative teaching license will be completing their program during their first year teaching.
With a number of educators leaving the field right now, this is a great opportunity for schools to get other qualified teachers in their building, particularly those who are passionate about their subject.
Exactly. Now, another unique group of people who may go into the field of education as a second career are veterans, particularly because so many people in the military leave the force before the quote-unquote typical retirement age that we think of. Many of them go back to school or enter a new field of work. Since 1993, over 21,000 veterans have gone into teaching, which actually isn't as high of a number as I thought it would be.
Yes, especially since many people in the military have leadership roles that translates well to teaching. Some retired personnel may go into high school's JROTC program, while other veterans go into teaching a specific content area or tutoring. In a little bit, Pearl is going to interview David Hamby, an Air Force veteran who went into teaching after his career in the military.
But first, our weekly tip for students. This week's tip is raise your hand in class.
That's right, children. Participating in class discussions or raising your hand to answer or ask a question shows your teacher that you are paying attention and are understanding the information. If you tend to be quieter in class, try raising your hand at least once a week. And if you tend to speak up often in class, try giving other students a chance to participate.
The more you participate in class, the more information you'll remember, and your teacher will get to know you better in the process. When we come back, I'll be interviewing David Hamby, a veteran turned teacher who currently works as a tutor at Huntington Learning Center.
So stay tuned.
Welcome back to the Huntington Way. I am here with David Hamby, a current tutor at Huntington Learning Center and an Air Force veteran. So welcome, David.
Well,
Thank you
thanks.
for being here.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah. So tell us about your experience in the Air Force before you became a math teacher.
So I started off enlisted. My parents had 5 kids, and they didn't have the money for us to go to college, and so I kind of had to find my own way to get there. And so I enlisted for 4 years. At that time, the Air Force was giving you $10,000 if you did 4 years, which I always tell students that that's pretty much a joke nowadays if you think about $10,000
Right.
towards college, the college expense. So I did enlisted for about 3.5 years, and I didn't even know that the Air Force had an academy. I knew about West Point and the Naval Academy, but I didn't know about the Air Force having an academy. And I happened to have an Air Force Academy graduate as a commander. I was in maintenance at the time, working on short-range attack missiles up in Maine. And I did pretty well. I was making rank pretty quickly. And he said, "Hey, did you ever think about going to the Air Force Academy?" And so I went to the Education Center and picked up some literature, and I applied and got into the Air Force Academy. So I graduated in '94 and went to pilot training, which I never thought I would do. I came out of the Air Force Academy with an electrical engineering degree, so I thought I was going to go into research and development, but I ended up going into pilot training, went into helicopters, and then I flew the HH-60 Pavehawk doing combat search and rescue for roughly 17 years, because I ended up doing a couple staff position type jobs where I didn't fly. And my last job was actually a non-flying job. I was a det commander down at Patrick Air Force Base working with NASA, doing the military support for their space program. So that's kind of my background. And then I retired in 2013. So I did about 22 years all
Wow.
total, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you have a ton of experience, a lot of great knowledge to spread. What led you to changing careers?
Well, at the time, like I said, I did that job down at Patrick, and that was a non-flying job. So I wasn't current on flying, so it wasn't like I could jump right into, even if I wanted to with the airlines, I had helicopter time. I didn't have fixed wing time, and there wasn't a whole lot of helicopter jobs around. And so I kind of blame my wife. I tell people that it's my wife's fault for me getting into education. She's a career educator in elementary school. And she said, well, why don't you look at, doing something in teaching? And so I looked into it. I actually, at the time we were in South Carolina, so I heard you guys talking earlier about certification programs. I looked into South Carolina's certification program. And I actually submitted, my transcripts and all that stuff, but it had been over 20 years. And so I got a reply back from South Carolina. I was trying to get certification for math, for middle school and high school mathematics. And they wrote back and said, hey, according to your transcript, you're about 12 credits shy. And so you're going to have to take some classes. And so I called them up and said, hey, is there another way I can do this? And they said, yeah, there's an alternative certification program run by a company called ABCTE. I don't know if you've heard of them. It's the American Board for the Certification of Teacher Excellence. I guess they're licensed or approved in 12 to 13 states, and South Carolina happened to be one of them. And so I ended up doing that program. It's a self-paced. You pay them, and it was online. They're self-paced. For roughly 6 months on classroom management, those kind of things, and then you go take a test with like a Pearson testing center, and then once you pass that, then you take a test on whatever particular study area you're trying to get into. So I had so I did 6 months of self-study, dealing with teacher type classroom management, how to structure lesson plans, curriculum, and stuff like that. Took that test, passed it, and then I spent roughly about 6 months doing a mathematics self-paced program. And then I went and took a test that basically approved me all the way up to calculus. And so that's what I did. And then it came time to find a job, and I ended up applying to a private school and got hired there.
Okay, wow. And what made you decide on math specifically and middle school and high school as opposed to elementary?
Well, having my wife talk about what she was dealing with elementary students, those kind of things, I was like, I don't know if I really want to deal with that. I think I'm more comfortable with older students. And I had coaching experience. I coached soccer for many years, and I did, pretty much middle school to high school level coaching, and so I was more familiar with that age group, if you will. And so that's kind of why I decided to go to that age group.
Okay, yeah. Now, much of your role in the Air Force also involved teaching and training. So how did that role differ from teaching in a middle school or high school classroom, and how are they maybe similar?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I heard you guys talking earlier. Classroom management was something that I definitely had to learn. In the Air Force, we would have training days where I'd stand up in front of a bunch of air crew and teach something like anti-hijacking or something like that, something that we had to do every year. And you had a captured audience, and it was adults that their job kind of depended on this, their livelihood depended on this. So it wasn't a whole lot of discipline kind of stuff that we had to do, because they were there because they needed this and in order to do their job. So switching from that to a classroom where you had to, discipline students, keep order, and all that kind of stuff. It was, so it was a different type of environment to get used to. I think some of the similarities, though, was, you still have to prep, you still have to have your lesson plan, you still have to clearly state your objectives, your expectations, have your resources ready, that kind of stuff. So I think there was a lot of similarity there that carried over.
And what about the age differences? Were there any similarities or differences in teaching in regards to that aspect?
No, a lot of our enlisted air crew, they were pretty much right out of high school. So that, 18, 19 kind of year year period, if you will. And so a lot of that, I think, I was used to that when I got into teaching at Heritage Academy, because I did basically 7th grade all the way up to 12th grade. And so, so the 7th and 8th graders, that came from the coaching side, from coaching soccer and being able to deal with those type of age groups. But obviously the closer up to 11th, 12th grade, that was like dealing with young air crew. So it wasn't that much of a leap.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And you taught at a private school for some time. Can you talk about the pros and cons of working at a teacher in a private school as opposed to perhaps a public or charter school?
Yeah. Well, my wife taught for 8 years in public school in South Carolina. And so I could hear, daily what she was dealing with. And then, so when the private school job came up, when I interviewed, they talked about the smaller class sizes. They capped their class size at 15, whereas my wife, she was having, anywhere from 25 to 30 students in a class.
Right.
At that particular private school, I didn't have to worry about any kind of lunchtime, duties or bus duties or anything like that. And there was the opportunity to do part-time as well. I could just show up and do a couple classes and then be able to leave and take care of other things, which with a public school, that wasn't really an option. So that, looking at those options of smaller class size, no additional type duties, and being able to kind of work when I wanted to, and that appealed to me. So that's why I ended up applying to that position.
And so in actuality, were your class sizes actually around 15 students?
Yeah.
Okay.
They held to their maximum size, and so I had a couple classes that were 15, but nothing larger than that.
Yeah. Wow. That's a teacher's dream right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, with your wife being an elementary school teacher, can you give us any insight into what it's like being a teacher while also having kids of your own?
Yeah, I think having a teacher in the family, I think it kind of gave us, a better idea of what teachers go through and more sympathy towards what their job entails. So as a parent with kids in school and having a teacher in school, I think a lot of times teachers talk about how disciplining and things like that should, even reading and teaching, your kids to read and things like that should be, a combination of both the teacher and the parent working together. And so I think nowadays, and I'm sure not every parent is like this, but I think a lot of parents put a lot more on teachers than really needs to be there. I think parents need to take a little bit more responsibility as well. And so as a parent that had kids in school and a teacher, I think we were a little bit more sympathetic to the parent or to the teachers when it came towards grades and homework assignments and stuff like that. We know our kids, but we supported the teachers because having the teacher, in the family, knowing what they went through and what they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So I think we took a little bit more responsibility of trying to work with our kids, doing homework and things like that, and disciplining when the teacher called and said, Sean or Ryan did this, or Marissa, we took it to heart and we did what we could to support the teacher and understand what they were going through in the classroom. I think the other thing that helped too is just knowing, I've had parents that didn't know how to check student grades until like halfway through the semester and those kind of things, when all that information was given, day one or day two. And so as parents with a teacher in the system, we knew how to work. At the time they were using Power School, so we knew how to work the program, how to check our kids' grades, how to keep up on how they were doing and things like that, and be able to push them on homework assignments that were missing, or check why they did terrible on a quiz or a test or something like that. So I think that helps, being involved and being able to check that stuff on a weekly basis.
Right. Now, and were you also working full time while your children were in school? Because I would imagine that would be difficult to navigate, right? Being able to help your kids when you and your wife have have a job outside of being a parent.
Yeah, there was a time period where both of us were full time, and and dealing with, just like every parent, trying to get to practices or recitals or those kind of things. And so it definitely takes teamwork to make all that happen.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of parents are dealing with that on a day-to-day basis anyway, but
Right.
but it does make it tougher. And then knowing that you have to do all those after school activities and then still get back and grade homeworks, or get ready, or get a test prepped for the next day. And so so it was challenging.
Yeah. But definitely worth it, right? 'Cause-
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're currently a tutor at Huntington Learning Center. What prompted you to become a tutor there, or just tutoring in general?
Well, in South Carolina, I actually was tutoring at a 2-year college, a local college called Technical College of the Low Country. They needed tutors for they had a math, they had math and reading and writing tutoring centers. And so I decided to take on a tutoring job during the summer. And I stayed on with them, and I worked summers. I think I did 3 or 4 summers with them, just working in the tutoring lab, helping students prepare for placement tests, or helping them with their homework, or getting them ready for a test in their particular course. And so I really enjoyed that. And so when I got here, I was trying to get back into flying, and so I wanted something that was part-time, something that would allow me to do my flying in the morning and then do something in the afternoon, and this was a perfect fit. And I enjoyed the tutoring part, so it worked out great.
Yeah, and you're able to work with different age groups at Huntington Learning Center as well.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Do you still prefer maybe the older students, or?
The more I'm working with the younger kids, at least the ones that are coming in to the Learning Center, I'm enjoying working with them. They, for the most part, they're very curious. They ask a lot of questions, and from what I've seen, at least in the time that I've been here, they're really motivated, and they stay on task, and they're good kids. So, so far I've enjoyed it. I think the lowest I've gone is probably 4th grade.
Yeah. Right. Which is a fun age, I think.
Yeah.
Because they are still curious and all of that. With me having been a high school teacher, that was also a little bit new to me at Huntington Learning Center, is working with the younger kids, but it's not too bad.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So with your experience in the military and as a classroom teacher, what is your favorite aspect of being an educator?
Well, I think we hear it all the time about the light bulb coming on when you're working with students. And I think seeing students that are challenged by a problem, especially in math, I don't know how it is when you're teaching writing or language arts type stuff, but with math, seeing them put a problem up in front of them, like in a geometry problem or something like that, and they're just confused. They don't know what to do, and then when you're able to explain it to them, and give them some tips and what have you, and kind of let them guide their way through the problem, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, now I get it, now I understand, and now I know how to do it. And so that's a great feeling, just seeing them being able to conquer something that they're probably scared of originally. And I see that weekly at Huntington Learning Center. Just giving them a little nudge. Hey, you might want to take a look at this, or try this, or maybe that formula is not the correct one. Try this one, and then when they're putting their numbers, they're like, oh yeah, I get it now. I understand. And so
Right.
that's a great feeling.
Yeah, definitely. And so, any advice that you have, or any messages you want to leave with our audience about either changing careers, or being a veteran and then going into the field of education? Any advice, or last thoughts?
I guess my advice would be, you're never really sure until you try it. Because I wasn't sure if this was going to be the right fit for me, and I still consider myself a pretty young teacher. I don't think I know it all after 5 years, but it was one of those things where it's tough making that transition, and I wasn't sure if it was going to be right, but like anything else, you're not sure if you're going to try it. So if you're on the fence, give it a try and see what happens, and you'll probably be pleasantly surprised at how it turns out.
Great. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on our show. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Well, yeah, I appreciate you having me here.
Yeah. This has been The Huntington Way. My name is Pearl Sunshine, and we'll catch you next time.